This is my project for GMD. I'm gonna first play through the game and then explain how things work. But first let me show you the settings. So here we can set it to full screen, change the music volume. I'm gonna just change it a bit, and the sound effects volume. I'm just going back so you can see how things stay in the correct position, and as I move the toggle, the volume changes. Let's keep them here and play the first level. Here we have 3 types of enemies, those robots that you jump on, the guys in blue that spawn a mustache when you shoot them. Let's try to see it in this guy, and also the hat. Yeah. Each gun paints the wall. And now for the red gun, they spawn that heart, and they shoot this heart. The enemies are shooting bullets. That's why that when they start running, I lose some health. And final 2 enemies. And this is the boss, the final boss. He's throwing bananas the same way the other guys throw bullets, so they kill, if I'm not too careful. Yeah, so we won. Now I'm gonna show you the arena. Same idea, but now they spawn continuously and at random, like in random places, and a random enemy each time. There's no health, so it's a bit harder, but the best way to win is by just sniping them. Yeah, so this is the game. Now I'm gonna show you the implementation. The player's movement is controlled by the keys. I transformed that into a vector, and I didn't tell the player to move in that direction. I also use the spacebar to jump, and since the player is in a rigid body, I changed the velocity in the y-axis to minus 0.5. I set it to that because I thought it just looked a bit better. I use the input from the mouse to rotate, so again I need to transform the input from the mouse into a vector. The enemy is an affirmation agent, so I just set destination and it will move that to that position. The enemy is always checking the player's position, and it then compares the position of the player with itself, and if the length of that vector is small enough, then the player will be the target and the enemy will move towards it. If not, it will just it will stand still. In the scene, the cars and the robots are rigid bodies, as well as the bullets and the bananas that the enemies throw. For interactions, I'm using on trigger enter. I could have used on collision enter, but I don't want the objects to collide with each other, I just want them to touch. So what I'm doing here is comparing the tag of the objects that are colliding with the player's collider. So if the player sets the trigger here, it will activate this gun. Same thing here. Here it will the player will get full health, and then we have the enemy and the enemy button tags. So the robot has 2 tags, the enemy one with this collider and the enemy button right here. If the player hits this, it will lose 1 point, in health, and if the player hits this, it will destroy the robot. The bananas and the bullets also have the enemy tag, so if they hit the player loses 1 point in health. The cars and the enemies are in different layers so that they don't interact with each other. To shoot, I'm using raycasting. I have the same script for both guns. So what I do is I compare the enemy I shot with the gun I have, and if they're both the correct one, the enemy is deactivated. And if I hit a wall, I will spawn an object, so it's that painting thing on the wall. For lighting, I'm using directional lights, and inside the boss final room, I'm using a point light. And all the enemies, including the gorilla, have a particle system that will go green once you shoot it. For sounds, I have 2 groups, one for the sound effects, one for the music, and I set the sounds to the correct output, see? And these groups are the ones I'm changing in the settings. I tried a lot of animations for the project. Most of them I got them from Mixamo, and the models I got them from different places, which meant that not all the models were rigged, and I had to do that myself, which I think was the hardest part of the project. But I learned a lot by doing that, and then I made the controllers. For the guy in the suit and the skeleton, it starts still, and if the player is still far away, it will just loop here, like staying still. Once the player gets close, it will start looping, like shooting, and it will go back and forth. Once, if the player gets far again, it will stand still. Once the player gets close, it will come back here. For the boss, the gorilla, it's also something like that. So it's standing still. If the player gets close, it will run, throw a banana, run, and it will loop here until the player gets far away. Then the gorilla will stand still again. Then in the UI and in the and in small things, for example, the hearts beat when you shoot the skeleton, and see, like this thing going, moving, the mustache, all those animations I did myself right here, which was really easy, but I think it makes the game look more real. There are a couple of menus here, the starting menu, then the winning screen, the losing screen, the settings, and in the arena, once you lose, the UI shows up there. So it's still similar to the other ones, but the background is still the arena. And in the scene, like the first level, you have a tiny text here and the health bar that are fixed to the screen. So you get to see how many enemies you've killed and how much health you have. I use some coroutines in the project, like here. After the player shoots, it will start the shooting timer, and what that does is set this boolean to true, wait half a second, and then set it to false again. And this boolean is used to allow or not the player to shoot. So after the player shoots once, it will have to wait half a second to shoot again, making the game a little bit harder. If the player hits an enemy, it will get a point. So it has to have a point manager. The point manager is the manager in the scene. When the gun shoots the correct enemy, it accesses the point manager in the scene and uses this method. So the score goes up 1, and the point manager is keeping track of the score to show it right here. And depending on the enemy total and the health bar, it will give you the win scene or the losing scene. Then we have the start manager. It's used by the menu since it has the methods for the loading of scenes, which is what the buttons do. So all the menus use the same script. Then we have the spawn manager. It is in the arena. It takes all of these locations, adds them to a list, and then picks one at random to spawn one of the enemies also picked at random. And it does this every set of time.